During the time when I was molested from around 10 years of age till about 13, it caused a lot of confusion in my life. It caused a lot of fear in my life. I was afraid to have any kind of close relationship with anyone of the opposite sex. I was fearful to be around a female. I would not talk to them. I would not get close to them because I felt so ashamed inside because of what had happened to me that I felt that they looked at me with shame too. Even though they knew nothing about it, it just seemed like it was written all over my face, and that they would know and that they would not want to be around me. I had no father to turn to. We did not have contact for years. The first contact I really had with him was when I turned 18 and reached out to him. I had beliefs, but did not attend church or anything. My family did not attend church. So God really wasn't centered in my life at all. I figured I was strong enough, tough enough to handle it myself, but obviously I wasn't. I did eventually start dating someone that I'd dated for a while, but that kind of furthered my insecurities because the relationship ended and it just really made it feel like it was my fault that the relationship ended. I didn't know why, truthfully, that it ended, but I don't know. When I first started viewing pornography, I would say I wasn't really introduced to it by anyone. It was finding some pornographic magazines and just lying out and just going through them and just finding arousal and excitement from that. It seemed like something safe for me to do. Because yes, there was that arousal, but I knew there was no way that those images could hurt me physically, and I thought emotionally either. So to me, it seemed like a safe thing to do. No one was going to hurt me in return. Kept me sheltered, kept me locked inside for many years. It kept me so insecure that just going out with a group of people would frighten me. So it not only damaged in my thought perception of women, but just in people in general. You know, I just had a major fear of getting close to anyone. With viewing pornography, it seems like you always want more, and you always have to up the ante. So the level I was at just became to a point where it didn't seem exciting enough. So I started into looking at things that were illegal in nature. And it was just maybe the thrill of doing something that was wrong too. I did not ever do anything I considered wrong in my life or anything that was horrible. Never did anything against anyone. Never carried a gun, never robbed a bank, never did anything like that. Never what I felt was exciting. Never really did anything exciting. So to me it was a chance for me to up the ante and do something a little more thrilling in a way. So it progresses where you just seem like you need more and more and more, but something a little more challenging, a little more thrilling. With the illegal activities in my life, I would really say a lot of the roots came from my childhood and being molested by someone close. And that was in my family. And it happened at such an early age that I couldn't get past that age in my life. I would say that viewing the pornography, I did kind of act out the offense that happened to me when I was younger. This was not only sexual abuse against myself, but also my sister too. So there was a lot of remembering of that also. So it was something I knew was wrong that had happened to me, but it was the only sexual feelings that I've ever had in my life, really up to that point. And so I guess it was something that almost seemed normal to me. So I couldn't really escape that part of my life.
Your passion that beats for Christ alone. Your passion.
When I was viewing the underage pornography, I really felt that I needed to cry out to somebody. And I finally cried out to somebody. It wasn't a Christian, but I still felt it was better than keeping it inside. Well, time after that, a couple months after that, this person decided to turn me in. And one day, my wife received a phone call from the sheriff's department, and that they wanted to talk to her about some of my activities. And she didn't have a clue what was going on. I kept it from her. Even at that point, I had stopped, but it was still something I kept secret from her. I wasn't going to tell her, just as I wasn't going to tell her anything that happened to me in my past, because that was all shameful activities for me. And she called me and said, okay, the sheriff's department has just called me. What's going on? And and I knew what was going on at that point. And I just felt like the walls were crashing down on me. My first thought was just to run. I figured my wife's going to leave me. We had just recently been married about 6 months ago before that. And I just really felt like my life was over. So my only thought was just to run away from everything. But I didn't. And I went in and talked to her and talked to my wife's parents, and we all sat down together. Finally, I was able to talk to her about the abuse that happened earlier in my life. And instead of her running away from me, she opened her arms up to me. And totally opposite of what I ever expected to happen. And finally, I had someone that I could talk to about everything, and now not hide anything from. And it's really the first time in my life that I've ever had anybody that I could talk openly to. So it was really a freeing feeling, but that did not change the consequences that I'd have to go through. When the police came to talk to me, I decided just to be totally honest and open about everything that had been happening. So I just confessed everything openly, did not want to lie about anything more in my life, did not want to hide anything, did not want to cover anything up. So I confessed it freely. And I would say about a year later, I was sentenced to prison and served 17 months. At the time I went to prison, I was a believer at this point. I would say this whole experience of being arrested and just going through that with my wife and family really drew me closer to God at that point. It still wasn't a really strong relationship, but it was closer than I'd ever been before. When I went to prison, I really had nobody at that point. And so I really started reaching out to God even stronger. And really that's when my relationship with Christ really became the strongest that it's ever been. After I became a Christian, I did struggle at times wondering why did I have to go through the childhood I went through? I understood why I had to go through the things I was going through now, but why did I have to go through things I did when I was, the things I went through when I was a child? And I know it wasn't God's choice for me for any of this to happen, but I also know that God uses events in people's lives to be able to reach out to others who are in need too. With what I'm doing right now and confessing all this openly, I know that God is working, not only in my life, but He can use this to help many other lives too. So this God's redemptive power is just awesome. The healing from the pornography, even though it's a challenge that's a struggle that I'll always have throughout my life, it seemed to be a little more manageable than dealing with the past abuse in my life. That was probably the biggest struggle to ever overcome, because I always felt really that the abuse was my fault. Maybe I was asking for it in some way. Maybe I deserved it. And these were people that I knew was supposed to love me, but why would someone that's supposed to love me hurt me? And it took such a long time to understand that it really wasn't my fault. So the healing was more of a struggle there than anything. What finally led to me believing that this wasn't my fault was I did some counseling sessions, and I was able to look at myself as a child again, put myself back into those shoes, but this time having the knowledge that I have now, and realize that I really wasn't asking for any of this to happen to me, that I really didn't deserve to have any of this happen to me. And finally, I was able to forgive myself. That was probably the hardest person to ever forgive, was myself, because I felt that all the abuse had to be my fault. So I couldn't forgive myself for any of it. But when I finally realized in my life, this wasn't my fault, it's not something I deserved, I was able to forgive myself and finally really be free of that and move on. The counseling that I went through that helped me really reach this breakthrough in my life probably occurred over a couple-year period. So it wasn't something that was just a one-day process, even a couple-month process. So it took some time to move through these issues, but the counseling was a great healing experience for me. Dealing with issues of pornography, I know it's going to be a challenge throughout my life. But I know the hurt that I've caused my family, the hurt that I've caused my children being away from them. And so I know that I never want to harm them again. But I use resources, I use people to talk to, accountability partners. Some of the breakthrough moments that I've had with freeing myself from the pornography addiction have been realizing that, you know, people in these images are actually people. They're not just objects. And these people that deserve a lot more. The people really don't deserve to be an object. People have feelings. I would not want my own children to ever be viewed in this way. And I know if that would have ever happened to them, I know the hurt that it would have caused me and the hurt that it would cause them. And the last thing I want to have happen is for anyone close to me, especially my children, to be hurt.
Pure passion that beats for Christ alone. Pure passion.
Through all the challenges in my life, my relationship with Christ obviously has grown stronger and stronger. And it's really because God's grace has been so evident. I've known that with most relationships and most marriages, that the spouse would have left in this situation. And God brought someone into my life that I would be able to share with and who would not leave. And God brought a family into my life, in my wife's family, that was so loving and so helpful and so willing to put their arms around me through this tough time. And God's blessed me with 2 children now. This is something that I never thought would ever be possible in my life, to have a wife, to have my own children. And even though I've felt like I've been, well, even though my life has been extremely challenged, He's given me so much. He's given me, again, a loving wife, a loving family, loving children, so His grace has just been so incredibly powerful. I know that I'm not the only person who has ever struggled with pornography, who has even struggled with underage pornography. And you might be feeling at this point in your life that you're trapped, that you have no one to talk to, as I felt. But you do have a way out. But first you got to start with your relationship with Christ. You got to ask for forgiveness. You got to ask to be healed. And you may have to go through hell to get there, but you will come back and God will free you. I mean, I just want someone to know that, and maybe I should just say this, you know, you might feel that that everything in your life has come to an end. That if you bring this forward, that your life's going to be over. But your life won't be over. If you confess it to God and give it to God, He will take it away from you. He will free you from it. He will lift that burden from you. And He will give you peace. And He will bring you new life, just as He has brought me.